You're listening to the Southampton Dellivery Podcast, a podcast dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans.
If you want to have guarantees, you have to buy a washing machine.
Fonte with a scooping header
We don't lose a match, either we win or we learn. And today we learned.
Отдача, Остин! Все-таки забил!
It's infield to Mane, 25 yards out. Lovely ball for Bella. Onside, 1-0! Blue foul shot! Oh my word!
Unbelievable. He ran around the pitch like Bambi on ice. It was very, very embarrassing to watch.
And now, your host, Matt Markstone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Southampton Dellivery Podcast, a podcast and newsletter dedicated to the Southampton Football Club and all of the SFC fans, and available right here on southamptondelivery.com. My name is Matt Markstone. I am the host of the show. And no matter where you are, no matter how you may be listening, whether this is your first time or you've been here before, thanks for making the show part of your day. I hope that you enjoy it, and I hope that you enjoy being able to wake up on a Tuesday morning, look at the Premier League table, and see Southampton sitting in fifth place, even if the performance wasn't all that good. And to be honest, I think not all that good is probably giving us a little bit too much credit. I didn't think we played well. And at the end of the day, I guess that is a little bit concerning, but more importantly, we somehow managed to get the win, which I think is something that we can be positive about. And I don't just want to try to make positives out of overwhelmingly negative performances, because we didn't really play very well. But Danny Ings is back fit. Salisu actually exists. He was on the bench, and Redmond is back and in contention. And whether that's a good or a bad thing, we'll have to wait and see. I can tell you one thing: he's not as much of a magnet for yellow cards as Musa Janepo is. But we will get to all of that this week when we talk with Matt Neuhausen. Matt joins the show. Monday night games are always tricky, given the fact that we generally have to finish the episode off Monday night and get it out for Tuesday morning, and having to record on a Monday means, or a play on a Monday means that, guests in the UK are up somewhere, at least 10, 11, 12 o'clock if we were going to do that. But this week we are going to talk to Matt Neuhausen. He is in Florida, the Florida Saints fan. We'll run through the match and some questions and all the normal stuff for you. Hopefully we made sense of it, but we both watched kind of while we were at work, so hopefully we don't completely screw this up. If you'd like to follow Matt on Twitter, you can do that at NeuhausenMatt, and on Instagram at Neuhausen_Matt. If you don't know how to spell that, that's okay. The links are in the show notes, so you can get to that relatively easily. But here is Matt. We'll jump straight into it, and we'll talk to you on the other side. I'd like to welcome back to the Southampton Dellivery Podcast, Matt Neuhausen. You can find him on Twitter at NeuhausenMatt and on Instagram at Neuhausen_Matt. Links to those are in the show notes in case you don't know how to spell it either, because I constantly mess it up. But Matt, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Hey, Matt. Good. Happy to be back on the program. Always enjoy listening, so it's always a pleasure to be able to come on and be a guest. So thank you for having me.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. Little bit of a short turnaround time. It's Monday night, your time. Saints have just finished playing at Brighton not long ago. And there's a lot of other stuff that's gone on recently, but we'll get to all that. But I would say, just to start, not a great performance, but we got the result, which I guess is all that matters. But we'll get into that in just a little bit. It's been a little while since you've been on the show, so just to kind of refresh people who maybe weren't listening at the last time you were here, how did you get into supporting Saints, and kind of what it's been like to watch from Florida, where you live, over the last 2 years of Ralph's time?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been a Saints supporter coming up on almost 7 years now. I want to say I started really following them in the 2013 season. Really just got into them because they were a relatively not well-known team in the U.S. A lot of people support the bigger clubs, and I really liked that they were a team that was able to get results against these bigger sides, with a lot of emphasis on their younger talent. Oddly enough, it was through FIFA that I knew a lot about the players and used them on FIFA, and it was around the same time that NBC had acquired the rights to show on a lot of the games. So I was like, I'll check them out on, TV, and it was just, cool to see them get the results. Like, I think when I started watching them, they got a really good result against Chelsea and Man City, and these are just, teams that are so popular over here, and love supporting underdogs. And it's just been such a good club to get into. A lot of the supporters are so friendly and welcoming to international fans, across all the social media platforms, and that just reaffirms my decision of supporting the team. And was fortunate enough to actually visit Southampton early last year for my first ever match, and it was just incredible being in the stadium and getting to see them play, and have just really, really enjoyed following the team over the years.
Yeah. I mean, going to the stadium is a big deal for us that live in the States, and it doesn't, happen. I've only been there once. You've been there once, and just the chance to see the pitch is great. And, for a long time, obviously people haven't been in the stadium yet. So I'm sure I think it's safe to say it'll be an emotional return for the fans as they get back into the stadium. Because I know, when I walked up and saw it, it's like, you finally get to see it. And now hopefully the fans will be able to get back in there. 2,000 of them, which sounded like a lot at Brighton. And maybe it's just because we're used to the fake crowd noise, but, or maybe they just had the microphones turned up, but they seemed fairly salty. I think I saw somebody tweet that, they obviously waited 10 months to get back in the stadium so they could yell, "Who are you?" to the Southampton fans when they went out to to the Southampton team when they went to warm up. So that's pretty fantastic. But I mean, over that time, I think you come to the team just like a lot of us did when NBC acquired the rights, and it became actually, quite possible to watch the team without, having to pay a ton of money out of pocket. For a while, they had it it was free. You could watch it all the time, and that was great. It is behind a paywall now, but very, very affordable compared to what people are paying in the UK and things like that. But you mentioned that, it's still a relatively, I don't want to say it's an unknown club, because that's not the right way to put it, but it's definitely not one of the more well followed clubs in the United States. And the Premier League in USA, which is the kind of marketing wing of the Premier League here in the States, specifically designed to, get more of us on board with it. They sent out some pies around Thanksgiving. They sent both, pumpkin pies and also some traditional English pies. And you were on the list to get one as one of the Saints fans. And I got them too. I got mine on time. You got yours a week late. So I'm sorry, but, how bad did that smell when you opened that package up with and just describe for the people what it looked like when you finally got in there.
Yeah, no, it was, I was really, really excited to actually open up. It was like almost like one of those package lockers, and I wasn't expecting the package. I just assumed maybe it got lost, that it wasn't arriving. Because I kind of got the inclination that it was going to be, arriving in the mail. And just starting to see the other people get theirs, and I was like, oh, cool, so some pies are coming. And then they just never showed up, and I was like, oh, that's a little disappointing. And then I think it was Tuesday night, went down, opened it up, and I was like, oh wow, the tape has got the Premier League logo on it. Like, oh, it's finally arrived. And like, maybe they just were late. And at the time, I really didn't have any notion that there was anything wrong. Get it upstairs, so excited, I unboxed it, and I was like, oh, like, there they are. There's both pies. And at first, I saw inside the pumpkin pie one, and I almost thought it was like maybe frost from the ice packs that were in there. And then I opened it up, and I was like, oh, this is very, very warm in here. This is not ice. Yeah, a lot of fuzz had grown on top of the pumpkin pie, sadly.
You didn't eat it, did you? You didn't try it?
No, I had to part ways with it.
And the English pies as well, you didn't try those either, did you?
Well, they seemed okay, but I was like, nope, not going to risk it.
Yeah. For no other reason, you don't want to have to go to the hospital with a bunch of COVID patients if you do wind up getting sick with that. So I think that's a good call. I'm sorry. That wasn't supposed to happen. They got mine to me all the way in California. They're closer to you. They're stationed closer to you. So I don't know what happened, but I apologize for that. But anyway, sometimes good, the best of intentions go the wrong way, and that is what it is. But we mentioned that the fans were back in the stadium for the Brighton match, and fans will be back at St. Mary's as soon as we have a match there. So that's great. But let's talk about tonight's match, because we don't have a lot of time, because we have to turn this around fairly quickly. And Ralph again named an unchanged lineup except for the bench, and I'll just let you go ahead with, do you think there should have been changes to the starting lineup, or were you happy with the way Ralph started things, and then even the changes he made as we'll get into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think despite the result last weekend, which I know a lot of us are very disappointed about how the game was closed out, still a really strong lineup. I was really confident in a lot of the names that were there, particularly, we're still carrying on from Ings returning from injury, so it was nice to see him start on the bench and not come into the action right away. So I think the players that were there, it was a good lineup to stay with. I know a lot of people were a little disappointed not to see Salisu start, but it was, good to see him there on the bench. So that's showing that we're getting to the point where we might see him feature in the team a little more regularly, and maybe we'll get him he'll come in to play for like the FA Cup campaign if we can get a good run going there. Other than that, I mean, going into the game, it was a pretty good lineup.
I can say that I wasn't really shocked about the lineup, and I think it was probably the right call with the likes of Ings and Redmond and Salisu, for that matter, coming back from injury. Remember, Salisu wasn't fully fit when we made the transfer. He was still recovering from an injury, so to have them on the bench, I think, is good. I don't think there's any reason to remove Vestergaard or Bednarak from the starting lineup for Salisu. As you said, the FA Cup campaign, he's there. The fact that he was on the bench means that Ralph is comfortable enough with him, in the system, that if he needs to come in and play, he can, and maybe his fitness is there for him to do it. But he's young. He'll gain something by sitting on the bench and watching the match with the coaches and the rest of the players, even though they're all socially distanced and stuff. And then if we do get into a situation where we need to make a sub, he can come in and do it. And then, of course, the FA Cup campaign after the start of the new year will be there. And, we could probably see him play one of these midweek matches, getting closer to, the new year and all these things, because we're going to have just kind of the matches are going to come thick and fast from here until Christmas. So that should, or from here until, I guess, New Year's Day. So we could see him somewhere in there. But let's talk about just the start of the match, because I didn't really think that Saints played very well and for most of the match. I just, for me, they didn't keep control of the ball. They did not. Brighton are struggling. They seem to press us pretty well at times, but I don't know. I guess I just wasn't overly very impressed with the with the way the team played. But what did you make of the kind of the opening exchanges up until Brighton were able to score?
Yeah, I wasn't too impressed with it either. Bit underwhelming with not being able to really create any sort of regular ball movement. Seemed like Brighton had most of that. Just seemed to have the regular struggles against teams that look to, play on the counterattack, and, Brighton obviously being, you don't want to call them a weaker side, but, they're not one of the more prolific teams in the league. So, they're going to sit back and wait for their opportunity and exploit any, high lines. And, we've seen that happen with Bednarak and Vestergaard. Sometimes they'll play a little bit more of a higher line and we can get caught out. So I think, Brighton were really waiting for that opportunity. And I thought the pairing of Gineppo and then Lanty, I thought he was really getting the better of him at the start of the match. It just seemed like a mismatch there. And fortunately, wasn't too detrimental, and they weren't able to find the net apart from that penalty. So I think maybe their lack of scoring is what kept Saints in the game in the early going.
Yeah, I mean, their decision to kind of go with pace. They played a 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, and I think they have it listed as a kind of a 3-4-1-2 maybe. But they had some pace up front, and they did look to play on the counter. And Lamptey playing as a wing back is going to get forward. And my biggest criticism of Djenepo is always, I think, that he is just unpredictable. He's hard to play with. I think it's harder for Bertrand to really be sure where Djenepo was going to show up, where Djenepo was going to cover for him if he goes forward or not. And there was at least once where Djenepo tracked back. I think he gave away a foul when he did it, but he did kind of bring Lamptey down, and you could see us pressing high and not really trying to cut that counterattack out soon, because if we didn't bring him down early on, then there were several chances kind of in the first 10 minutes where they were just looking to play on the break, and we're getting in, and it was causing us some serious issues. But as you said, it's not really anything new. This seems to be the game that Saints will play, is they'll allow you to do that, and they're going to trust that one, McCarthy will come up and make a save, or the guy will play the guy offside at some point. But it's dangerous and it's tough to watch. Especially there was a situation, I think, inside the first 5 minutes where Gross seemed to be in, he was offside, but the referee never blew. They just let it go. And once I think Armstrong or Bednarak and McCarthy had done enough to kind of get the ball away, the referee just said play on, and it's dangerous for us because guys can get hurt and everything else. And then, I think we're all sitting there wondering what's happening because we can't see the linesmen and things like that. And then, I think that's frustrating for me at least, but I don't know how you saw all that.
Yeah, there was that run of play earlier too. I don't remember if it was going to be eventually called offside, but it was when I think Gross squared it to Welbeck, and it was Welbeck's shot that I think went high at the bar.
Okay.
But there was no one, on him or being there to prevent the shot or even block it. So, the whole play was dependent really on Welbeck being able to find the net, and unfortunately he didn't.
Yeah.
But that's what I saw early on, and I was just like, wow, like that right there is a consequence of being susceptible to the counterattack. And if that's a more clinical finisher, that's a goal for a lot of other teams and a lot more quality teams.
Yeah. I have written here that, we look vulnerable on the counter, nothing new. Also, more possession, fewer chances, also nothing new. We do struggle to break teams down, especially if you look at that team that was on the pitch early. Danny Ings, for some reason, whatever it is, he just makes us better. We survived the time that we were without him, but we looked, and whether it's the combination of the team talk from Ralph Hasenhüttl at halftime and the introduction of Danny Ings, or whether it's just the introduction of Danny Ings, I'm not sure, but he did a lot. And also maybe it's it's solidifying that left-hand side with having Walcott out there instead of Djenepo, who is Walcott slightly more predictable, which I think sometimes you want. And then Redmond, we'll talk about his performance as well in just a little bit. Yep. But I just before we jump all the way to the goal, because this it's a little bit frustrating to give away a penalty. Nobody likes it, but in this game, VAR played a semi-big role. And we have a question here from Chris Thomas, who says, he's on Twitter at CThomas1982. He says, please talk at length in the pod about both penalties. I actually think the biggest problem with the VAR is that it enables the laws of the game that are not very good to be enforced. And I think Brighton's was a penalty. It says he has no idea about ours. So obviously Brighton do wind up getting the opening goal. It didn't come from open play, even though they had kind of the better of the chances. But I would say up until that time, nobody had really had a great chance. I think the XG at that point, which I know people are going to make fun of me for, ours was 0.03 and theirs was 0.19 up until the penalty. So nobody had really threatened goal at this point. And I did tweet before the game, Matt Ryan has the lowest save percentage of any keeper in the Premier League with at least 5 starts. And we only managed 3 shots on target today. 2 of them went in. I wish we could have done a little bit better to make some chances, because he is obviously not in good form. And I think we could have, the game could have been a lot different had we just done a little bit better. But let's talk about the first penalty. It comes from the throw-in. The ball kind of gets just kind of flicked into the area, and Ward-Prowse is up against Welbeck, and his hand is well over his head. The ball touches his hand, spins on his hand. I mean, what is there any defense for Ward-Prowse in this situation?
You know, as a Saints fan, I think he was, you know, in the wrong here. I mean, you just can't have your hand up that high, you know, especially when you're in the box like that, coming up against a player. Because even if that wasn't his intention, you know, you just run the risk of making that contact. And I think that's just what happened there. So overall, I think it was a fair call, even though it came at our expense.
You know, I'm not even sure what he was doing, and I don't think he was expecting the ball to come up over Welbeck's head like that and over his head, which I think, but it still doesn't. It doesn't. You know, there's no reason to run into the back of Welbeck and then or press up against him and then throw your hand that high in the air. I can understand having it balanced out behind you to kind of hold your balance, but it's just way kind of up over his head, and the ball clearly rests on his hand, and it is a penalty. And I wasn't happy to see it. I really wish that it wouldn't, because I'm a Saints fan. That's the truth. Is I wish it wouldn't have happened, but it did, and I can't really defend him. And to be honest, for the 25 minutes before that and the 20 minutes or so after that, they deserve to be ahead, I think, because we weren't very good, and maybe they weren't that much better. But I want us to be better than we were, and so I think going through that, you know, for the most part, Lamptey looked dangerous on their right hand side. Obviously, the penalty puts them ahead. And I did make a note here that, you know, normally I would associate Djenepo with you know, potentially being out muscled by players and things like that. But Armstrong got muscled off the ball quite a few times tonight early, which I didn't like to see. And he changed it in the second half, which I thought was better. But you know, sometimes those guys, it makes me worry when I see them go down, and if they don't get the call, it just makes me think that maybe they're going down slightly too early. But I don't know. It happened again just before we scored as well. Vestergaard coming up to his goal now from a James Ward-Prowse free kick. So an assist for Ward-Prowse, a goal for Vestergaard. Vestergaard has 3 goals in the last 4 away games. I think somebody tweeted, I think Tom Murray from the Untitled Lights podcast tweeted, I think he's got more goals than Aubameyang, Aguero, just a number of other high profile forwards all combined this season. So that's pretty great. And I mean, just, I guess, walk us through what your thoughts were with the, you know, going into halftime and getting that just kind of on the stroke of halftime. Did that change your perception of the first half at all?
Well, it didn't really change my perception of the first half. I still thought the play was poor, so I thought that the goal would be a good chance to go back into the dressing room feeling better and hopefully recharge for a different second half. And, you know, I feel like we did get that to some degree. But, yeah, obviously, you always want to have a goal close to halftime if it's in your favor, and I felt good about it. And, I mean, what more can you really say about Vestergaard recently than he's just been, you know, a revelation both on the scoring side and on the defensive side. I mean, those goal stats for him are, I think, what prompted Southampton to buy him in the first place from Borussia Mönchengladbach. Like, it was just his ability to get high on set pieces and, you know, make things happen. Even if it's not scoring goals, it's, you know, creating chaos and getting the ball up and creating chances to score with his height. And we've just been seeing the reward of that with him being able to connect with Ward-Prowse from those set pieces. It's been so great.
You can see him taking up different positions throughout. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, he was kind of at the back post to start, and he was trying to nod the ball down to other attackers. This time he meets the ball right at the penalty area, and I think he started a little bit deeper and was able to come forward. And he's got a lot to do from that spot. I mean, you're talking 12 yards out to get your head on it and then still supply put the proper direction on it and supply the power enough to get it away from Matt Ryan, and he does. And it's just kind of wonderful from him, and I think we just have to give credit to him for what he did there. So, you know, great. And really, I'm not sure we deserved a goal based on how we had played up until that point. But you mentioned kind of his I guess just how good he's been and how much he's kind of changed. And when he first came into the team at Saints, he was slow. I mean, he's still slow, but his turning radius was an issue. The fact that he seemed to put himself in positions to get beat over and over and over again when guys would just run right past him, and he seems to have positioned himself a lot better. He seems to be more comfortable in this system, and he is consistently the center back who is stepping up into midfield and making passes that cause problems for the other team, which we will come to when we talk about the Kyle Walker-Peters incident, because it's the pass from Vestergaard that finds Kyle Walker-Peters that eventually does that. But several times he stepped into midfield, he broke the lines, he made good passes, he continued his run a couple of times, which is always scary because it's going to take him forever to get back. But it did happen, and as you said, it didn't really change my perception of the first half, the fact that we got a goal, but the fact that we went in there to halftime level, maybe not quite deserving it, maybe not being at our best and still finding a way to stay in the game. I think that is the sign of a team that is progressing. And then we came out, and with the changes at halftime, with Ings being introduced, that I think was a big deal for us, because we looked a lot better, whether it was what was said at halftime, whether it was the introduction of Ings, or whether it's Djenepo being removed because he was going to get another yellow because he was just asking for it all day. I thought Ralph really played that one as well as he could, and I was really impressed with us early in the second half. And then I think it kind of just faded a little bit because we just couldn't find a rhythm. We couldn't seem to keep hold of the ball. We kept we'd play into a tight area, and we would find a way to get out of it, and then we'd play into another tight area, and then we lose the ball, and then we kind of just have to start this all over again. And it was a little bit frustrating at times to watch it happen. But I guess what did anything stand out to you in the second half in terms of what you saw versus the first half, or was it just that Danny Ings is really good at football and we missed him?
Yeah, I think we were so fortunate enough to get that goal right at halftime, because I think that sort of gave Ralph confidence to put Ings on right at the start of the second half, because, then it's a level game, and, he gets that whole 45 minutes to really get his impact, and maybe he's not coming in for a more, partial cameo, 15, 20 minutes in. So like you said, for whatever reason, him just being on the pitch, I think, is a wild card factor, because it really, you see him play off of other guys around him, and everybody just looks better. The offense looks way more cohesive with him being out there, and just his ability to create chances and look for opportunities. I mean, can you imagine if Redmond had finished that ball after he hooked it up those couple times? Like, that would have just been so incredible to see that ball finished, and probably would have been a goal of the season, or a candidate for one at least, because it would just been so pleasing on the eye to see that go in. You just, as good as Adams is and as good as Walcott is, you're just not quite seeing that. So having him on the pitch, I think, definitely improved the whole overall offensive game. But what surprised me was just the midfield turning over the ball in a couple different occasions. It would just be like they would get closed down and try to keep playing the ball, and eventually they would get stripped of the ball by the Brighton players, which I guess credit to them, having an effective pressing game. But it was just frustrating to see people like Romeu, and I think there were times Armstrong just lose the ball without really creating a pass. And that's something I think that Southampton has excelled in recent weeks, being the better midfield team. And I think they were outplayed today, or if it just at least outmatched by Brighton. They, knew how to close them down.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of it, it was Brighton being the better team. But the ability to introduce somebody like Ings, we've seen what it means to other teams when they can bring on a striker that changes the game. And Ings himself did do that for us, which I thought was obviously super important. You mentioned the Redmond chance that he kind of blazed over the bar, and I almost think Danny Ings wished he just would have left that alone and let him do it. But this is also, Redmond's coming back from injury as well. He's been out of the team now for a while, and there were a lot of people beforehand kind of wondering if Djenepo should be starting. And you kind of feel like maybe this is just always what happens with the team is as soon as we get settled and we say, okay, this is the team and this is the way it should be. As soon as there's a player that kind of slips up a little bit, people will jump to that position and want to fix that position. And for us, for a long time, it was center back. And then, when Che Adams was not firing, who was going to partner Danny Ings. And then Armstrong tended to lock down that right-hand side. Romeu has been good in the middle of the park next to James Ward-Prowse because we were wondering who was going to do that. And that left-hand side with Redmond has been kind of the question mark for the last couple of weeks. And Walcott has played there, Ginevra has played there, Redmond's been there, but Redmond really hasn't had the season that we all kind of hoped he would have had. He's actually come, I would say, his best season was not last season, but maybe the season before that, I think is the one I'm thinking of. It was his best, and he's kind of stagnated or maybe even taken a couple steps back from where he was that year. And he came on today, and I'm not sure that he really offered all that much. Ginevra is not unreliable. Ginevra was unpredictable. Redmond has a little bit more predictability, so I think that may actually help Bertrand a little bit because Bertrand can predict where he can be and where he can go, and Redmond will cover for him and things like that. And so I don't know. What's your kind of take on Redmond and where he is at this point? And who, if you had to pick a starting lineup tomorrow, who starts on the left hand side for you?
Yeah, I mean, Redmond, I think, is always one of those players, he's just on the cusp of just really breaking out and being, a consistently positive contributor. And I think we got that, like in the season prior to last, and people were really hoping for it to continue into the following season, and it just kind of didn't. And I think with Ings having the successful campaign he did, it just kind of like, I don't know, people didn't focus on it as much because we were still getting goals and we were still producing on offense. But yeah, it's absolutely right. That part of the lineup has just been not a consistent area. And, while I do really enjoy Moussa Ginevra and, his ability just to move the ball and make opponents uncomfortable, it just doesn't have a really good aptitude yet for defending yet, I think, in the Premier League. You think you made the point earlier about him being, physically overmatched a lot of times. So I don't know if he's at the ability to start consistently. I think I'm more comfortable deploying Redmond at the beginning of the game, having him work with Bertrand if, Bertrand's more comfortable and knowing where Redmond's going to be, like he said. And maybe bring on Ginevra later in the game when, the opponents are more tired and he can bring that kind of like that shifty ability he has to move the ball around, and, we can capitalize on tired opponents. Like we've seen that before. There were those few matches last season, coincidentally, one of them against Brighton, and then I think either the week later or the week after against Sheffield United, and, he was a difference maker in those games. And I think that's about the most positive he can contribute. I'd like to be proven wrong, but just from what I've seen, I don't know if he's just starting quality.
Yeah, and just because he's not there now doesn't mean he won't get there, right? And I don't. You're not saying exactly that he can't get there. It's just he's not quite at that level yet. And I think he's young and he's naive and he gets booked too often for somebody in our system who we're going to have to share the fouls around. And it seems like he gets about 2 fouls and gets a yellow card, and then we're kind of stuck. And so maybe that played into our hands today because it maybe allowed Ralph to introduce Danny Ings a little bit sooner. And I wonder, how much of that is pre-planned where, hey, Danny, you're going to play 45 minutes today. Doesn't matter, what the score is or whatever. We're going to give you the minutes so you got them in your legs so you're ready to go for next week. Or if it's looking at it going, Ginevra has to come off because, it's just not working. Lamptey was giving him a tough time down that side. And so that's what happened. But whatever it was, it worked out for us. And I think there's a lot of contributing factors. And I think you can just see how much better we can be when we have somebody in that left hand wide 10 role that is just maybe more streetwise, maybe more just in tune with what the Premier League requires to be in there for the whole 90 minutes or whatever. But I think if you pick a spot on the team right now that needs addressing, that's the question mark, I think, in the lineup now, because I have no idea who will start there come next weekend. So we'll have to kind of wait and see. But there was a lot of talk on our coverage here about Lamptey and the job he did going forward and what he's been doing for Brighton going forward. He's young, he's exciting. He made this move from London to Brighton, even though and there's all these question marks. That's great. Like everybody wants to hear these success stories. That's fine. But our right back plays a huge role in our offense going forward. He played a huge role today, and we talked about the improvement in Yannick Vestergaard. But there was a situation today where we had the ball and we were kind of being pressed, and there wasn't really anywhere for us to go. And Kyle Walker-Peters gets the ball. He kind of just passes it off to Vestergaard, and then he makes his run. And as Vestergaard steps up, past the kind of the press into like some space, he finds Kyle Walker-Peters on that run. He sees the run. He makes the pass. And Walker-Peters chests the ball down and then is fouled. And I said to the guys who are on the patron group chat, like, security just stopped by my room because they were driving by and I was yelling that I thought it was a penalty because I was on my lunch period at this point. But I was yelling at the computer screen, and so they just wanted to make sure everything was okay, which was nice of them. But then the referee comes over and he immediately he paints the line on the ground that it's outside the box, and I was just kind of thinking, like, maybe we get a goal from a set piece again, but that kind of that play was probably over. We put in a lot of corners, we put in a lot of free kicks. They don't often, they're a low percentage kind of chance. But what was your take on the initial foul? Did you think it was initially in the box, or what was your initial thought?
Well, yeah, I was kind of under the impression that it was just outside. I mean, with the ref calling it there right away. So in my mind, my initial thought is, it's kind of not in a great position for Ward-Prowse. Where I was like, well, a free kick's a free kick, and we know he can do things with that role. So, I wasn't too optimistic about the prospect of getting a goal from that set piece. And then by that point, we had kind of gotten into the territory of, this could be a possible penalty. And that's when I was like, okay, well, I want to see how. And from the first angle that I saw, I wasn't really convinced. I was like, well, we're not getting this. And then I saw the other angle, which was more of the goal view facing the pitch. And I was like, oh, well, there's definitely a lot of contact here in the box. Like, I really hope this gets called now, because this looks more convincingly like a penalty. And then sure enough, it did. Now,
I think David Coote, if you just search for his name on Twitter, nobody is surprised that he was involved in this. His initial decision to give the foul outside the box, because it is a foul. There's no question that is a foul. That what Solly March did there, Solly Marsh, I should say. I don't know how to say his name, actually. So whoever the guy is, spelled like the month, March. He gives away that foul, and it's clumsy. He's never winning the ball. It was something you pointed out earlier, but I couldn't tell. It looked like there was initially contact outside the box, but maybe there was still a chance for Kyle Walker-Peters to possess the ball, and he could have made a move after that. And so the contact that kind of eventually brings him down does occur inside the box. But I mean, it's right on the corner, and it is the law. If there's a foul inside the box, that's a penalty. It doesn't matter what part of the box it's in. It doesn't matter if it was intentional, like the James Ward-Prowse handball. It is a penalty. That is the rule. But I mean, one thing that we were talking about earlier is, you look across at what the possibilities are if Kyle Walker-Peters brings that ball down and chooses to cross it right. Then we have one person coming into the box at that point. I think there's 3 or 4 Brighton defenders, if you don't count Marsh there. And then, and yet we are going to be rewarded with an 80 or 90% chance of converting the penalty. And in a game that was that finely balanced, I think, we got quite frankly, we got lucky. And if that would have happened to us, that penalty goes the other way, I don't think that any of us are going to be happy. And I think, this guy would be getting it from us if he gives that penalty against us, just the way we, even though we're not going to say it now because we don't want to say it because we're fans and we want our team to win. But I have a hard time watching that ball or that call get overturned, especially he didn't go to the monitor, which is something that we've seen more and more officials do. And he didn't do it. He just said, no, he makes the VAR signal, points at the spot, and then they go. And so it's, I don't know. It doesn't look clear and obvious to me. And so I don't know how you feel about it exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you bring a good point because if it's a reverse call and say that one of our guys taking down one of theirs and the call happens, you're absolutely right. I don't think we're happy about it. But from what I see, I think the right call was made. And maybe the issue is not seeing enough consistency from the refereeing, because if, it's a clear foul, you want to see that in the visuals. So it's not like they're seeing something that we're not seeing. So if something still looks a little more questionable, why didn't he go look at the video review? Maybe that's the issue people are taking with this more primarily than the actual call itself, is how just inconsistent the decision making has been. And as a Brighton fan, I can sympathize with that frustration. For Brighton fans.
Yeah. No, I knew what you meant. I was going to give you a chance to correct yourself anyway. So good job there. I mean, at the end of the day, we walk out of there with a win, and I think we have to be, somewhat thankful, because we don't normally get to play that badly and then get a win. This is we've run into issues before in the past where teams have come to Southampton, or we've gone away and we've played well and they haven't played well, and somehow we still come out on the losing end. And this is the kind of reverse of that. I don't want to say Brighton, they didn't play us off the park by any means, but they created more chances, they created better chances, and somehow they're going to come out on the losing end, and they just struggled to kind of score goals. And we should say that their changes were all attacking changes. They were going for the win. So fair play to them. And they did, I think they executed their game plan just fine, but ours just kind of worked out a little bit better for us, and we walk away. And with the win, we now sit in 5th place. So we're inside the top 6. We're actually in the Europa League spot, which is fantastic. And I think we need to be proud of that and see that even though we didn't play well, we still somehow managed to get the win. And we should recognize the fact that is the sign of what teams need to be able to do if you're going to mount a run to be in and around the European places. And so I think that is something we can take away from this week and be relatively happy with, even though we didn't maybe play as well. Obviously, we didn't play as well as we wanted to. We won't sugarcoat it. We just didn't look that good. But let's answer a couple of questions, unless you have something else you'd like to discuss right now.
Yeah, I'll just put my own thoughts on what you just said. There's 38 games in a season, and obviously the aim is to try to play as well as you can in each one and get the results in each one. But some results are going to be better than others, and even if it wasn't the best performance, I'm happy that there was a result that, even if we weren't playing the best that we could have played, still played well enough to put ourselves in a position where a win was attainable, and that's what happened today. So you can't say that the play was poor, because you don't win if you play poor. Walker Peters was brought into the box because we were playing the ball down on their end of the pitch in a key moment, and one of their defenders was caught out and made a mistake. So it just happened to be more decisive, and it's just good that it went our way this time.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on and answer some questions before we end this episode of the show. We kind of just discussed one already, but this one comes from Dave Lee, who's one of the patrons, and patrons get the opportunity to have the priority for having their questions answered on the show. They get more reminders than the rest of you, which I'm not sure is a good or a bad thing. But Dave Lee sends this in, I put it on Twitter. He says, what's our greatest concern with the club right now? Is it depth? Is it signing Ings to a new contract? Is it conceding late in matches? And then what's your least concerning thing about the club right now? And it's kind of an open-ended question. So I guess just for you, what's your what worries you the most? And then what are you not worried about so much?
Well, I was going to say the main worry for me is just being able to make sure that points aren't being dropped, because obviously that was the highlight of last week. And then, I think it was enough concern for this week when Brighton were pushing late in the game. I was holding my breath every time I saw Lamptey make that run on the side of the pitch, and I was holding my breath because I was like, oh, I'll take this one first out of position, and then we've conceded. But then, you make a great comment about Ings being re-signed. That's also, I think, a big concern, because you see how much difference the offense plays when he's out on the pitch. So apart from just being the goal scorer that he is, it's the overall presence that he brings and inspires the players around him. So it's more than just one dimension that he offers. So you don't want to lose that, because it's arguably, apart from Ward-Prowse, one of the most successful components of the team overall right now.
Danny Ings is more than just a goal scorer, and I think you've kind of summed it up beautifully there. And we look so much better with him on the pitch, and sometimes it's hard maybe to quantify. And I'm someone who does rely on statistics and stuff to kind of back up what I just don't want to say things that I think if there's no kind of proof of it, But I think if you watch the team in the first half and you watch the team in the second half, there's a big difference. And we did play, we didn't completely fall apart when there was no Danny Ings in the team. But this kind of goes into another question that comes in from one of the patrons. And Kevin McGee says, I felt we would have beaten Wolves had Danny Ings played. And do you think we would have won tonight without him? And I think just looking at that, you can see the difference in the team, with Ings and without Ings. And like I said, we didn't fall apart when he wasn't in the team, but we definitely look more cohesive. We look like people know where to be. And I think sometimes I think about defensively, you think, knowing where your teammates are and what they're going to do is important. But I think sometimes when you're trying to run these kind of passing combinations and things, you need to know that people are going to be in a certain place. And I think it might have been Romeu over the week was speaking about, I can kind of close my eyes and know where I'm supposed to be and where my teammates are in this system. And I think that's super important. And with Ings there, I think that all comes together. So, I think it's quite possible we could have beaten Wolves had Ings been there. And I do think we'll struggle to score goals without him in there. But, we got by today. We got through those games without him. Luckily, the injury wasn't as severe as we thought. And hopefully, going forward, he can sign that contract. I don't, it's all speculation at this point. Whether he will or he won't, he seems happy. But of course, when players sign for clubs, they say, yeah, I'm happy here. I've always wanted to be here. But, people say that stuff all the time. Che Adams said, we definitely want to win the league. And we all kind of went like, whoa, man, like, do we haven't done that before. So maybe just calm down a little bit. But, you want guys to be excited. And if all I can hope for is that Danny Ings plays the rest of the season for us. And if we're going to sign him to a long-term deal, that he does it. And if he doesn't, I will have very much enjoyed the time we had with him. But of course, I'd like him to stay, I guess.
I'm probably echoing a lot of what's been said a lot already regarding fans' attitudes towards Danny Ings. But, you just look at where he's at in his career. He's not like super old, but he's not like young either. I don't know another top team in the league that will deploy him the same way Southampton does at this point, even with, the stats that he has, because the English national team is a perfect example of that. Look at a player who scored over 20 goals in the Premier League last season, still playing second fiddle to another striker who, was injured a predominant amount of that season. And, coincidentally enough, that was the team that had the major link to him last season. So, I just hope that that's enough maybe to convince him to stay. And, and he's also a local guy too. So I can't think of a better position for him to be in at this point in his career than to be positively contributing as the main talent in a team that he grew up supporting.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, as a fan, I hope he stays. And there's going to be a lot that has to go on. He's probably got one more contract in him, one more decent size contract. So as a player, if you know that that's what you have, maybe you take and look at that and say, okay, that's what's kind of what we have to do. So maybe if we can't pay him and he needs to make the money, then we may have to do that. So you hope that's not the case, but that may just be it. But overall, I think we're happy with the result, even if the performance wasn't as great, I guess. So anyway, Matt, I want to say thank you for jumping on here late, and I just appreciate your time. And sorry we didn't get more time to kind of sit and chat and do all this, but this is the Monday night games make for a weird kind of time. So thank you very much. If people want to follow you, once again, the links to your Twitter and your Instagram are in the show notes. And hopefully next time we send you pies, they will be edible when they get there. And I just want to say thank you for that.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure being on the episode, and I was happy we were able to chat about a win, and we'll look forward to the next match coming up here.
All right, man. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
And that does it for this week's episode of the Southampton Delivery Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've enjoyed it. Special thanks this week goes out to Matt Neuhausen. You can find him on Twitter at NeuhausenMatt and on Instagram at Neuhausen_Matt. Matt, thank you for stepping up, even though the pie delivery was, a couple days too late. Hopefully this is a good makeup. I don't know. It's not really makeup. I wanted you on the show anyway. But anyway, thanks for taking the time to do this. Hopefully you are on time to get your significant other from the airport. And if not, just blame it on me. That's fine. I live 3,000 miles away. What's the worst she's going to do? Block me on Twitter? Anyway, if you want to follow Matt, you can do that. The links are in the show notes. You can also follow this show on social media if you are interested. We are at SFCDELL_IVERY on both Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/SFC Delivery. No underscore in the Facebook address. And if that's kind of confusing, just head on over to SouthamptonDelivery.com. There you have links to the show on a number of platforms. You have links to sign up for the newsletter, which comes out each and every Friday. And you can also follow us on social media from there. So thanks to everybody who already does that. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support and the engagement. I just really do appreciate it. And I do have an apology to make. Andy, you sent in a question several weeks ago, and I never addressed it. We will address it next week because I think it will fit next week, hopefully. So I apologize. I'm sorry. We'll get to it. Thank you. And thank you to the rest of you who are listening. And thank you to the people who help make the show possible. And those are the patrons. So to all of you over at patreon.com/SFC Delivery, thank you for your support. And thank you also to the partners of the show, the Saints Archive and the Southampton page, both of which help make the show possible and help make sure it gets all the way to your ears. So thank you. Follow them if you don't already. The links are in the show notes. In terms of credits, all music for the show comes courtesy of the Free Music Archive at freemusicarchive.org. The intro song is Epic Song by Boxcat Games, and the end of show credits that you listen to right now is Aim is True by Poddington Bear. The logo for the show is done by Matt Beeling of the We Are Southampton page on Instagram. If you don't already follow him, please make sure you do. And that does it for this week. And until next time, remember together, we march on.